They say the last laugh laughs best, and that definitely seems to be the case after the Quakes win and elimination of Sacramento Republic in the Open Cup. After multiple years of early exits in the Open Cup, the Quakes were finally able to give us what we've been waiting for years, a statement victory. But while the Quakes did dominate this game in every sense of the word, the scoreline was only a modest 2-1, leaving some fans, including myself, partially unsatisfied. My name is Kevin, I'm joined by Luis, and together we're the Quakesaholics. Let's talk about this match. Hot off the 2-1 win, Luis, how are you feeling about this game? What are your initial takes?
Honestly, pretty good because I thought Niko was good. I feel like Sac didn't even show up today. Like, yeah, they got a goal at the end when we were man down, but it was like nothing performance from them for 95 minutes.
Yeah.
Literally from minute 1 to minute 95, they did nothing and we're down. So, pretty good. Honestly, after all of the trauma from going there, pretty good.
You know, I was going to say, I was actually surprised that you went tactical minded first. I kind of asking you, like, as a fan, how are you feeling? Because this is a game that the tactics, who cares? We won. We had to win this game. This is a must win game. And it's almost like I'm just as happy that we won as the fact that Sacramento lost, because I'm tired of just rolling out B teams and then embarrassing ourselves.
Yeah, we rolled out a B team and we still absolutely dogged them pretty much. I thought it was like I had a midterm today, so like my caffeine was kind of wearing off by kickoff, but like I could have had like a full like Red Bull or whatever, and I still would have been yawning because it was just like it was boring, but like in a good way for us. Like it was just I never felt like I know like I was watching this from the comfort of my home, like on TV, and I know you were at the stadium, so I'm curious to know like the difference there. And I did kind of from the text, but yeah, I felt like it was easy, crazy easy.
You know, I didn't get that feeling at all. For me, being in the stands, it felt a lot more nerve-wracking than this should have. And particularly after the red card, I was like, no, like this can't be happening. It's the same script as last year and the year before that, of just somehow, some way we have individual mistakes and then they get the better of us, right? Like they become the Goonies. And I just had a bad feeling like the last 5 minutes of the game, like 2-0, just for some reason, whatever reason, just didn't feel like enough. And of course, we conceded the goal in, what was it, like 95th, 96th minute. And it felt like it was coming. But then once it did, I was looking at the clock. I was like, okay, like they only have a minute. Surely this can't be completely disastrous.
Yeah, like unless the ref just like wanted just absolute like drama.
Yeah.
Like a marca effort, then I think it was like basically over even with that goal. I was kind of concerned. There was a few moments when they like did have a chance, and there's like that kind of unwritten rule or like law almost of like soccer where if you don't finish your chances, the other team is gonna like they get one and they're like gonna score it. And that did kind of happen, but it's like, boy, were there a lot of missed chances this game. Like it could have been easily 2-1 was flattering, very flattering.
Yeah, this scoreline does not represent what happened. So yeah, do you want to go high level tactical, or do you want to start talking about any individual performances? What are you feeling?
I'm down to just highlight some players that like, because there was a lot of players that we have not seen often, and then some players that we've seen like here and there, but just like cameos mainly.
Yeah. So what are some standout performances for you?
Like I said, I think the reason, honestly, I went like kind of tactical at the beginning is because that's usually what we do on this show or on this channel. But like, yeah, I think like Niko stood out for me for sure. I thought he did good. Preston Judd, crazy stat that I heard at the beginning of the broadcast that he has played Sac 7 times and has 5 goals and 2 assists. I think he got an assist and a goal today. So now he's like GA against Sac is higher than his goals played or games played against them. So which is got to give him credit there. And then Pellegrino, you got to give him some credit for being there, but there were 4 or 5 big chances and you like see one of those and you kind of go away from the game remembering that. So that was like one, maybe not a positive, but it's like something that stood out to me.
A standout, like, yeah.
Oh damn. Yeah, like bro, how is the ball not going in?
Yeah, I think Pellegrino, every time he missed a big opportunity, the stadium got louder and louder. And by the time it was the 4th miss. Like people, it was almost like we had scored a goal. Like that's how much noise was being generated from the stands, which is at some point you just think like, how is he missing? But also like after that
Yeah.
fourth huge miss when he just puts his head down, like I'm gonna be honest, like I actually felt bad for him. There's just it's like a level of just being unlucky and also
Like
just
a
a some
secondhand embarrassment.
yeah,
I
and it's
think.
just like the culmination of like everything that's been going seemingly wrong for him in the season. And it's not
Yeah.
like he's had a terrible season per se, but there's just been a lot of missed opportunities despite him still getting goal contributions for the team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And like, this was our top goal scorer last season,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've seen him put the ball in the net, and that's part of the reason why, like when you think of Pellegrino, like what he offers, mainly it's like his finishing ability, being in the right place at the right time, getting on the end of things. But it's just, yeah, games like today where it's like, geez, like I feel like that he could have had 10 more chances and like it still wouldn't have gone in. It was just one of those days.
Yeah, it almost felt like towards the end of the game he just didn't want to even go for those chances. Like he was cool with just passing it around and not running up. But
Yeah.
I will say, to his credit, there's two things I want to say. One is that for the first, I don't know, like 70, 80 minutes of the game, before the red card, essentially, he was really hustling. Like the fact that he got to so many opportunities is a result of him running straight on goal. Does that make up for the fact that he missed those chances? No, not at all. But I don't want to just hate on him because he did score a goal. And I mean, he was part of this victory. So I just don't think it's fair to like completely criticize him, right? And the other thing too is I do think that it's not necessarily relevant to this game, but I think we've talked about this before that my opinion of Pellegrino has definitely changed in the past couple of weeks of like seeing him interact with fans. And I do think that he cares a lot about the team. And I do think that because of that, I have like a little bit of a soft spot and just the way that he's always,
Fair.
acknowledging the Ultras, acknowledging Seismic Union, all the supporter groups. There's other players that I think have bad mentality, which I'll get to shortly. I think he has the mentality. I think he's giving effort, and it's just the finishing, which, like you said, is what we're paying him to do, and he's not doing that. So
Right.
like all the criticisms are warranted, but I don't know. It just being completely negative in a game where he did score, it doesn't seem right.
Yeah, and again, like I do think like that's just like the nature of this game. There are times where you just know that it just like doesn't work out for whatever reason. Like just
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is about that day, like something's just like off or whatever. And like I think too is the fan reaction. Obviously, like he's human, so that's probably also like contributing to his own kind of confidence. I imagine is gonna be hit by that. And it's like you almost more concerned about not missing than you are about like actually scoring
Mm-hmm.
after that after a while. So yeah, like it just compounds on itself, right? Again, you're right. He did get on the score sheet very early on. So, and
Yeah.
that was a big factor as to why the game felt so easy as well for the majority of it.
Another theme of this game, you could kind of tell why certain players aren't starters, and you can kind of tell where they're at compared to like MLS level. And I think this is one of those things where you look at this and you're like, yeah, Joseph Martinez, Chicharrongo are not going to be missing four big chances per game. They're not going to be missing a yard out from goal when it's basically a completely open net shot, right? And we expect more from Pellegrino, and we should expect more from Pellegrino. And there's definitely a lot of room for improvement there. You didn't mention Judd. I was actually kind of surprised that or sorry, no, you mentioned Niko, right? We haven't talked about Judd yet.
Yeah, I
Okay,
just talked about how Judd is like just destroys Sack for whatever
right,
reason.
right, right. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, obviously got the goal, got the assist, pivotal player in this game, and got man of the match. I think the fact that he got the goal and the assist is the reason for that. But outside of those two moments, I actually thought he had a pretty meh game.
I
There's
agree.
particularly, I was talking about mentality with Pellegrino, right? I think Judd is one of the players that I'm referencing that like sometimes the mentality doesn't seem completely there. Yes, like sometimes he has that dog in him, like that rough warrior spirit, whatever you want to call it. But in this game, like playing in Sacramento, a team that like it's not an MLS level team, and to see him lose the ball in the midfield and just stand still and just kind of like look up at the sky, like not seeming like to not care. And then he loses a duel on the sideline and he's more focused on like arguing with the ref, trying to get a call instead of trying to win the ball back. Like it just rubbed me the wrong way of like this game. In those moments, it's like 2-0, 2-1, like that, the game is not secure. Just because we've been attacking the whole game and because we've had possession does not mean that we can just take our foot off the pedal. Like, this is a game that, because of the level of the opponent and just the history of losing to Sacramento and being knocked out, like, this is a game that fans want to win by multiple goals. And this is the first time that I've left the stadium annoyed after a win. And it was because it just felt like 2-1 was not enough. And it should have been more.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. Props to him for man of the match and the goal and the assist, of course. I'm not going to take that away from him, but that's the one thing I noticed about Judd, that, like, come on, man. Like, you got to run the whole 90. You can't just stop.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was happening a lot where he would just like get pissed
Mm-hmm.
and he was just like, dude, the guys are like running with the ball past you, and like you literally just lost the ball. Like that's the one time where you should be like just.
It's the opposite of what we saw from him in recent MLS games, where, like, he has the mentality and the spirit, but then he doesn't have the goal. And now it's like the opposite criticism. So I don't know. I guess it's a
Yeah,
double standard on my part, but it was just,
maybe Jid just works in mysterious ways.
yeah. I guess on to more positives. We did see, I think, 2 or 3 players return in this game that we haven't seen play in a while. The first one being Paul Marie getting the start, Jack Scahan getting subbed in. I don't think he has any MLS minutes. Benji Kikanovic coming back from injury. I think he got a few minutes towards the end of the game. And then, of course, Hernán López getting subbed in. Hernan getting subbed in the stadium, the energy level felt like a goal.
It's
I don't know
crazy.
if you could pick that up through the TV, but it was metaphorically, it felt like the stadium became brighter. And I know that they did not change anything with lighting, but that's just how I perceived it.
Yeah,
Any
yeah,
thoughts
that's
on those?
massive. That is massive. Just seeing him like pass the ball, honestly, something as simple as that for me, like you can tell that he's, especially like in this lineup, he's like a step above everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have like a, wasn't too impactful in the game in terms of like output and like chance creation, shots on goal, anything like that. But it's good to have him back. Good to get some minutes under his belt. He also had some minutes against the Town, which was crazy. I watched that literally and figuratively, like men versus boys. And yeah, it's good to see him back. I'm happy to have him back. One thing that is interesting is how he's going to fit into the lineup again, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that was such a big talking point with Chicho and Martinez. And last time we saw, all 3 of them on the field at the same time was in Kansas. And even then, we didn't get to see them on the field for the full 90. So, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, definitely a tough task for Bruce to have to now figure out a way to get him back in the lineup. We talked about this a little bit after the Portland game over the weekend. Some propositions in there if you want to check that out. But yeah, hopefully he can get fully reintegrated with the first team in Denver, right? Next game.
I think so, yeah. Also, I think that just makes minutes for Niko even harder.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you noticed this, but in the broadcast, they did kind of, focus in on him after he got subbed out, which made sense because he was occupying the same spaces as Hernan would be occupying typically. And he didn't look too happy though when he got subbed off.
Nope.
So yeah, it'll be. I don't know. I think it's gonna be tough. We'll see how that plays out. But there's definitely a lot of competition there in that kind of like number 10 creator role.
Another midfielder that we actually got to see minutes from is Noel Buck. I think he only played in one MLS game previously last weekend, right? So this is a much larger sample size. I don't know if it's an apples to apples for what we should expect in MLS games. I thought he played an okay game. Nothing stand out, nothing
Mhm.
terrible. What did you think?
I agree completely. He got pocketed a few times, I thought. But overall, fine. Good to have another guy in there, I suppose. I know that midfield, especially kind of that like 8-6 position, was something that we talked about as being a little bit concerned about in terms of depth before the season started. It's good to just have another guy who can play there. He's still young. He's only 1 year older than Niko, actually. I found out today, which was interesting. And
Oh wow.
I mean, I feel like Niko, you kind of perceive him as like still like a really young player and like developing player. So I think
Hmm.
like Buck is like another player that should be kind of seen in that way. And like, with those expectations, I suppose, that you have of a developing player. I expect him to be kind of in and out of the lineup, getting a lot of minutes with Town FC, hopefully. But overall, promising, I think. And he did have a good few incisive passes, especially at the beginning of the game, that look good.
And I think the last thing to talk about in terms of this game is the defense. We saw it shift to a 4 in the back. That's something that we haven't seen since the Charlotte game, which went disastrously. This was also, I think it was Reed Roberts' first start, right, as a center back.
Start, I think so. Yeah, I always get him and Floriani mixed up, to be honest.
Yeah, 2 new
But
guys this
yeah, I
season.
think you're right.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure that's his first start, if memory serves correct. Yeah, it was interesting, and I think part of the reason was because Bruce Arena probably knew that we had enough attacking power to overwhelm Sacramento, especially playing at home. And I think it worked also in part because Sacramento sat back for a lot of this game, and so we didn't need to have more defenders. We also, I don't think we have the depth to play 3 center backs in the back, and obviously we've seen this historically as well, that there's just a lot more importance given to MLS, and we want those players ready. They just played against Portland on Saturday, and then we want them to be ready against Rapids next Saturday. And then, of course, the Wednesday after that is the game that people won't stop talking about against Inter Miami. It was a combination of like, structurally this works against Sacramento because they're going to sit back, and also we don't have enough center backs to play 3 in the back.
right. What were your thoughts on Rodriguez starting this game? I think this is the first game he started in the past, because
3
he missed
games?
the last two, right? Two or three.
Yes, the last game that he started was against Sporting Kansas City at home. You look at this team and like you can clearly see that this is a B team, right? And I think that this, as well as the last 2 games, just kind of paints the picture of like where Rodriguez stands in Bruce Arena's list of who is up next, especially as like a right center back. I think at this point it's pretty safe to say that like Floriani is going to be Bruce's guy. I think Rodriguez is an excellent player. He's shown consistency for his entire time with the Quakes, and I think that he just had a bad patch, and Floriani stepped in and he stepped up, and that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know if this is like confirmation bias, but I kind of felt like Rodriguez was playing a bit more seriously, I would say, like defensively. It just felt that way. I don't know if I was like kind of looking for that, if that makes
Mm.
sense, because I
Hmm.
know like he's trying to get in the lineup. I'm just curious how you felt about like his performance this game, or if it was just like any other Rodriguez performance for you.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, that's interesting. You said that. Like, I this wasn't something I was thinking about, but hearing you say that, I do agree that he was definitely more reserved. We didn't see any times that Rodriguez would just dribble into the opposing half, if I remember correctly. And
Right. Yeah. That might slightly be part of the fact, like you mentioned, that it is two center backs, so there
hmm
isn't as much cover in behind to make those kind of runs. And
right,
but it could also be, like he's just kind of getting the message now that like sitting on the bench wasn't just a one-off. There's going to be a lot of competition for that right center back role, and you know, I mean, offensively, he's fantastic for a center back, for any player really, but especially for a center back. But it's, he is it is can't get away from the fact that he's been a part of some heavy heavy score lines as well.
yeah. He did have one mistake in this game. I think it was in the second half he slips, and that gave Sacramento a strong counterattack. I think he slipped around like the middle of the field, but apart from that, I felt like he played fine defensively. Of course, I
Yeah,
haven't.
that was that
Yeah,
was
no,
like a Monterey. I
I,
remember so much of Monterey, bro. The flashbacks like immediately came
yep.
on. It was so bad.
I
But
thought the same
thinking,
thing.
thinking of it,
Like I just visualized myself in Monterey Bay, watching that game, seeing him fall over, and then just losing 1-0. But
yeah, like
luckily,
in the
that didn't
creator
happen.
kit and like yeah, like so vivid. Honestly, like just from stuff like that, like I'm just so glad that we could just get through that victory relatively unscathed.
Yeah, it's like what we started the video with is like the fact that we didn't lose to Sacramento is worthy enough for celebration as much as like the fact that we won. And that's not to say that like Sacramento is like a serious rival. I think there's like this narrative being painted about like, oh, the NorCal Derby. I don't see it that way. I more so see it's like the Quakes versus the Quakes because again, historically we don't give this competition the importance that it needs because MLS is just money talks, right? You look at the stadium
Right.
attendance and it's like it's clear that fans have voted that they prefer MLS games. Yeah, and I guess the last thing to say to end on another high note is like we look at this team, this is clearly a B team. These are not our regular starters. You can argue that some of them play here and there, but it's like when others are injured. The fact that we can play this B team and look this strong and still have names that are pretty big names amongst Quakes fans. Like, you can say what you want about these players, but you can't argue that Rodriguez, Pellegrino, Niko, Judd, they're big and known names amongst fans. They're not no names. And it's not like previous years where you get to watch these games and you're like, who is that? Because you've never seen them play. I would argue that like everyone other than Noel Buck, because he just joined 2 games ago, and Reed Roberts because he's just younger, we just drafted him. Like, the typical Quakes fan knows all of these names probably. And I think that's a reflection that, again, we have a much deeper roster. And sure, there's some positions that feel thin, like goalkeeping and maybe center backs. But overall, the team, like the level of this team, has greatly increased this season. And I think that's also good to keep in mind as we go forward in this competition.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, interesting. We'll be facing Portland, if I'm not mistaken, at home, which is good, which is really important. Obviously, we just got over, or we just beat them pretty convincingly as well. So that'll be exciting. Of course, no idea to see what kind of lineup we'll have. It'll be like a more MLS level lineup or kind of something more similar to what we saw today. Only time will tell, but exciting that now Open Cup is something that we can, look forward to and still have some kind of something else going for us there aside from playoff push.
Yeah. So I think that's all we had for this game. Thank you, Quakes, for finally giving us some sense of joy in this U.S. Open Cup. I feel like it's been so long since we could celebrate something. And yeah, it feels good. Feels good to win 2 games back to back. And next game, like we mentioned, will be at Colorado Rapids. We won there last year, if I'm not mistaken. I think Hernan scored either 1 or 2 goals. Hopefully, he can get reintegrated in the team, and we'll see what happens over the weekend. Thanks for listening.
Thank you guys.